The Major League Rugby offseason has finally passed. The 2023 Fantasy MLR Draft is all wrapped up and a new season is upon us. It's time to get to business with our very first Fantasy MLR Week preview, breaking down all the matchups in this opening Week 1 from a Fantasy MLR perspective. We'll also talk about how last week's draft went down and how league managers set up their teams for a shot at winning this year's Fantasy MLR Championship title. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode number 53 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of trying to make fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. And man, oh man, it is finally here, MLR 2023. We are here in Week 1. I'm Ryan Yee, of course, and with me, as always, Matt Yee. And Matt, we are finally here at the opening of the 2023 Major League Rugby season, which means the fantasy MLR season is upon us, which couldn't be more exciting.
Yeah, no, it's official. We're in Week 1. All the teams are putting out their Week 1 graphics or Week 1 posters. You know, we're getting ready for those lineups to be released. But honestly, I haven't even started really thinking about Week 1 because I'm still buzzing after that draft on Friday. So, yeah, I mean, I'm feeling good. The team's feeling good. This is probably the best I'll feel all year. It's only downhill from here, really.
And there were some draft rankings or draft gradings, I should say, that were released by a special someone that definitely has you buzzing a little bit more.
It definitely helps.
That's for sure, and inflate the ego a little bit. But yeah, we had an exciting fantasy MLR draft take place last Friday. It was our second ever draft that we've done as part of the Fantasy Ruckers League. It was super exciting stuff. Had a live stream going. We thought we were just gonna get through about 3 or 4 rounds on the live stream, but our league members were pushing and putting. They wanted to grind out and stay up for the whole thing. The live stream ended up going for 3.5 hours, but it was 3.5 hours of an absolute blast of a time, interacting with our league members and some of the community members there, and then obviously watching it all unfold in terms of how you guys were building your teams for this run at the championship Fantasy Ruckers League jersey that, if you're watching the YouTube video, you see behind me.
Yeah, I mean, if you do end up watching 3.5 hours of that draft video, you will see about 3 hours of me sweating because I have no idea who I'm picking. So after the first 2 rounds, and maybe we'll get into a little recap, but after the first 2 rounds, I was sweating. Everything was just downhill from there for me.
Yeah, it was a good time to say the least. We are going to break it down. We got a jam-packed episode, obviously, in this week. This is, like I said, at the top of the show, our very first Week 1 preview of the 2023 season. It's all on schedule now. You're going to get used to the same episode format every single week. We're going to be talking a look ahead to, obviously, a breakdown of the upcoming matches. We're going to do a look back on the matches, obviously, in the previous week. And then we're also going to, what everyone waits for, the waiver wire pickups, the key pickups heading into each match weekend. So we're obviously going to have some of that a little bit in here. Going to do a Week 1 preview of those matchups. We're obviously going to talk about the draft that happened and kind of the surprises that led there. Talk about some of those draft gradings from that special someone, and then also talk about some possible pickups ahead of this week as people kind of round out their lineups after having some time to reflect here, Maddie, about the guys that they drafted and maybe regret drafting a little bit. But nonetheless, it was an awesome time.
Yeah, no, it was. I'm still in disbelief the fact that we went 3.5 hours, but and it is what it is.
And I'll just say it, if you've been a listener of this show or a viewer of this show, you kind of have an understanding of the running joke we have on this podcast now, where it all started with me throwing a poop emoji beside Matt's name when I released the standings of last season, just to remind people that he did finish last in our inaugural season.
Yeah, let them know, Ryan. Just make sure they remember, because they haven't heard enough.
I did say that the draft last week was going to be the flip of the page, but this is my last chance of getting this in. I just want to mention to the viewers on the draft
No,
stream.
do you know what, Ryan? You're not the only one. I saw on Twitter today, even after Rugby Morning puts out, and I spoiled it. So even after Rugby Morning puts out the article of me at the top, at the top of his rankings, James Dealey still comes in flying in hot with 5 poop emojis, not just one. So, I don't think I'm getting away from that anytime soon. But look, I'll make the people forget. I told you, ninth place finish, they'll forget.
My point being that, they opened up the draft stream with just a whole wall of poop emojis.
It was disgusting.
To welcome you into that new 2023 year. But maybe you'll be able, especially after that draft grading that you got, maybe you'll be handing it off to someone else in this upcoming 2023 season. We'll see. But super exciting stuff, man. We're going to get into all that right now, but obviously a little bit of housekeeping here. If you aren't following us already, you want to do that at the Fantasy Ruckers on Instagram, Fantasy Ruckers on Twitter. You want to join our Discord channel. We got a
Discord.
We got a link of that down below. It's been absolutely growing and exploding.
We're not even just talking
over the past
MLR,
recent days. No, we're not. We got
it's all rugby. Every
nations
rugby
in there. A little bit of super rugby here and there. It's been super exciting stuff. If you enjoy being around people who really do love the sport, you'll want to be joining our Discord community. It's been blowing up. A lot of people have been joining as of recently, especially after the draft that we had. So it's really exciting to see that. And then, of course, if you like what you're watching on YouTube, make sure you throw us a like. If you like it even more, subscribe there so you get notified each and every week when we do drop these episodes, which have been.
And it's your last chance. Leave a poop emoji in the comments. Last chance.
There you go. And I will say too, out of all those social media channels, Instagram, Twitter, especially our Discord, we are continuing to working on expanding this thing to more and more people. You've heard we now have an official website that is going up. We're going to talk a little bit about that. That's going to help our league members in terms of managing their team. So that's a big step up from what we were working with last season, with me having to do everything by hand, basically using Google Sheets. Not basically, like actually using Google Sheets to get this all sorted. And that's one step closer to being able to expand it to more and more people, to allow everyone in the Major League Rugby community and beyond enjoy what is Fantasy MLR, because it's been an absolute blast after one season. I can only imagine that's going to be even more fun heading into this year as well. So we're super excited for that. But I think it's now time to start hopping into the nitty gritty, Matt. And we've done it the past few episodes where we start off the top. But once again, the commissioner has a little bit of an update.
Oh, again. How are we going to make this a habit?
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
We can't be making this a habit,
Hear
Ryan.
ye. Commissioner Yee is here with the Fantasy Ruckers League update. Yeah, we're starting again off the top with keeping our league members in the loop and everyone who's been following along the Fantasy Ruckers League in the loop as well. Kind of the big announcement here, guys, is that I know that it's been a little bit delayed with this website, getting it out and live for you guys. It is up and running. You can check it out, thefantasyruckers.com. We got a www now, Matt. We got an official thefantasyruckers.com URL. So you can head on there in your browser. You can look at that. You can see kind of the outwork and out framework of how this fantasy league is going to operate. For league members, we are going to set you up soon with creating your accounts to have access to your team. Once you guys are on there, we'll be able to add the guys that you've drafted onto those teams. And a video shortly will be coming out to you as a tutorial on how you'll operate on a week-to-week basis. So make sure you keep a lookout for that. And for those of you who aren't in the Fantasy Ruckers League but are interested in Fantasy MLR or hoping to one day eventually get into the Fantasy MLR space through us, you'll want to be keeping along and keeping track of that website. We'll have everything updated on there. We'll have the top players on there. We'll have the matchups for you guys to access. So you'll be able to now watch in real-time basis, just as our league members are watching or following their teams by accessing that website, which is a huge step up from what we had last year. Last year, we would have to post on social media and keep people updated that way. But if you want to take that extra step, you can head to thefantasyruckers.com and now keep track of it on your own, which is super exciting stuff for us, because the more people that are involved with it, the more people that are digesting this stuff, it's going to be great. And we do plan in the future to be having some more fantasy content on there, as well as Matthew kind of spoiled at the top of the show. Rugby Morning has so kindly even I don't know how this guy does it with all the stuff that he's involved in,
I don't know.
and how much time. There's only so much time in the day, but nonetheless, he's found a little bit of extra time to contribute to Fantasy MLR and the Fantasy Ruckers. So he'll be coming out with some articles on a weekly basis, breaking down stuff, giving you rankings, things like that, which is super exciting. He's already come out with a Fantasy Ruckers League preview on how this whole thing really started. You should go check that out. Right now, it's on the MLR Fan blog network that was started by our very own web developer Alistair Kirsch-Poole, which is really cool. So you can check it out there. But we do hope to cross post those articles onto the fantasyruckers.com in the very near future. So that will be there as well. Another reason for you to bookmark the fantasyruckers.com on your web browser there. So should be good. So again, league members, by the time this podcast comes out, the video should be up. So make sure you go check out that tutorial. We'll keep you guys in the loop. I'll also give an update in terms of how the weekly league, the week operates on a week-to-week basis. Basically, what you guys will be doing, kind of similar to fantasy football, just pushed a little bit. Waiver wire will be running through the overnight through into Thursday morning, so you'll be wanting to put in those fab bids on Wednesday evening at the latest. Get those in. Starting lineups will have to be set by the time of each team's starting kickoff date that weekend, and then all the points will be tabulated there. You'll be able to track your matchups there, and it's going to be super exciting stuff. So again, that tutorial is going to come out. That's how the weekly in a nutshell kind of operates on a week-to-week basis. But yeah, it's time to get to the nitty-gritty and really start getting this Fantasy Ruckers League thing running and rolling in its second season in existence after what was a very successful inaugural season. That get you pumped up, Matt?
It got me pumped up. I mean, let's get past the commissioner updates. Let's get into the good stuff. Let's preview the games. Let's get to the waiver wire. Let's get to the news and notes. Let's talk some players. Let's talk some fantasy.
Absolutely. All right, let's hop into it. We got to break down some news and notes that has some pretty big fantasy impact in the world of fantasy MLR. A couple teams now releasing after now that preseason is all wrapped up, releasing their lineups. New England Free Jacks have posted on social media with kind of their lineup that they'll be heading into at least week one with. Matt, you'll be happy. I know you drafted Reese McDonald and
I drafted all their flags.
You drafted all their flags. You drafted Reese McDonald. You drafted Jason Potro. So you have the handcuff there. So I don't think you can necessarily go wrong. New England is a good team. So I'm sure you were reassured after seeing that. And then of course the Rugby New York Ironworkers have also posted their lineups heading into the first week as well. So expect many more teams to be coming out over the coming days with those rosters.
Clarification, not lineups yet for week one, but for the rosters for their upcoming season. Rugby, only thing I want to say is the Ironworkers, I was so pumped up about Doyle Hedgepath being drafted and how incredibly athletic for a prop he looked in his highlight tape. I'm sad to see him not on the roster, but hey, that Rugby New York Ironworkers front row room is pretty packed, so he would have had a hard time making it.
Now it is a step up from what I feel like we were experiencing last season, because I feel like a lot of these announcements came even later and closer to opening day, if we even got, you know what I mean, some of these announcements. So having these definitely provides some clarity for fantasy managers, especially ahead of waiver day that's going to process this Thursday morning. So anyone who wants to make a pickup, who maybe has seen something they don't like with the guy that they drafted last Friday, they'll be able to put some waiver bids and some waiver claims in on Wednesday, this evening, I should say, to process through to tomorrow and have those lineups ready for the opening rosters on February, or opening games, I should say, on February 17th. Now let's hop into it. I mentioned preseason, teams wrapping up their preseasons, getting those final tune-up games put in there. And when I mean tune-up games, I really do mean tune-up games, because it looks like, Seattle Seawolves taking down Seattle Rugby 49-0. So really getting the confidence going there. And then a surprising one, Old Glory DC taking on the Toronto Arrows. Old Glory DC putting up the points in that matchup, 42-14. Other matches that were played, the New England Free Jacks taking on the Houston SaberCats. They fell short, 34-21. And then a little bit of a mini tournament over at Frank Brown Park in Panama City Beach, where Atlanta played the American Raptors and Chicago Hounds, and then the Chicago Hounds facing the Atlanta Rugby Atlanta, and then American Raptors as well. So a little three-way kind of mini tournament there in
Yeah.
Panama City Beach, and then wrapping it up with the Utah Warriors taking on the San Diego Legion as well, 56-26 there. So yeah, preseason matchups all wrapped up now as we head into week one. Anything in particular that kind of stood out to you from those matches?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me is one, it didn't seem like Toronto had their full lineup in. A lot of guys were out and didn't travel with the squad. So let's not think too much about into that beating that they took. They had James O'Neal starting a hooker as a fill-in and nobody to as a replacement.
Where's our boy
so,
Jack? Where's our boy Jack?
Exactly. Where's my boy Jack? I mean, he's on Rock and Roll Squad, but where is he? Yeah. And then the other thing, I just, the Houston and New England Free Jack game was broadcasted, so I had a chance to watch some of that. Houston looks great. I mean, for the first half, for the first, I think 25 minutes, I swear the cameraman could have went to grab a coffee and just leave the camera staring at the New England Free Jacks half because that's all where the ball was. But yeah, other than that, I mean, like you usually say, it's preseason. Let's move past it. We're into week one. Let's start getting hyped up for that.
Absolutely. And one last news and note that I want to get out of the way is that, and this is for you, Matt, ahead of I guess really the day before that the Chicago Hounds are set to take Old Glory DC on Saturday. On Friday morning, they're going to be holding an open training session. So we didn't get enough likes for you to head out to their open tryout back in, what was it, January? So hey, maybe we can get enough likes on this episode to get you quickly out to Chicago for this Friday for a quick open training session, 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. At SeatGeek Stadium Dome, which would be funny if they're a scrum half.
I mean, look, if that happens, I'm gonna have to make a quick waiver wire move and pick myself up. So
there you go. I mean, in all seriousness, though, I think what this really stands out to me, we talked about it a little bit on the Eagles Overseas show when we were on there last week with John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, and then obviously Bill Baker of Eagles Overseas, how there's a little bit of uncertainty with the Chicago team. Nothing that I've seen that's been clear as of yet. So this is really a lot of just speculation, but it sounds like, and we've heard through people that there may be some work visa issues where some guys may not be able to join the team right off the get-go. So maybe there are some holes to fill here, and they're using this open training session to maybe fill those last little remaining roster spots. But nonetheless, I think the hype for the Chicago Hounds team is dying down a little bit just because of that uncertainty that we really haven't seen them and haven't seen them in action. And really, the first time we'll have any tape on the Chicago Hounds is when they show up at Segra Field in DC on Saturday. Really.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to them. I mean, we'll see. I'm excited though. I'm excited to see what they look like. I'm excited to see what lineup they put out there. Like you said, lots of speculation. Only one way to find out is watching the game.
Absolutely. All right, let's shift on now to kind of talking a little bit.
Wait, Ryan.
Yes.
You forgot an important one here.
Okay.
You brought up the Chicago Hounds, right? We got a new Chicago Hounds type team coming in 2024.
That is correct. Yes, we cannot skip over this. I'll open it by saying we have mentioned it on the show before when there was kind of rumors and speculation about this team joining. It's not a rumor anymore. The MLR making it official. The Miami Sharks will be joining the MLR in 2024. Kind of got mixed feelings about this. One, I'm super pumped up that Miami's going to have a team because I've said this before on this show and on other shows that I am a big fan of the whole Miami Vice color scheme. So if they can adopt that as part of their kit, I'm going to absolutely fall in love with the Miami Sharks. And we've talked about kind of our rankings with some of the kits this season. That would instantly go to one of the best, I think. And you throw a collar on there too. It's going to look absolutely, man. You're starting to realize kind of my taste here when it comes to rugby kit. And then my second, I guess, kind of thing that puts on the flip side is that we're going to be back to odd numbered teams in this league.
Yeah.
And just as like a commissioner of fantasy sports, you know how we are it's so important to have even numbered teams, but I guess that's just a small price to pay to have a team like Miami join the MLR. And what is it with a bunch of rugby teams naming themselves the Sharks? I mean, we've got the Sales Sharks, we got the Cell C Sharks, and now we got the Miami Sharks. So it is interesting to see.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, the speculation is that this could draw a lot of players down to Miami. They could be a pretty good team, but the only thing I'll take away is we got a Southeast North American team. Might as well get a Northwest team in Vancouver.
Ah, there we go. And we know that that Maddie has been pushing that for quite some time. And there have been
Yeah.
people on the show that have visited. I know Andrew Coe, a guy that spent a lot of time out in Vancouver. He's been is a big proponent of getting a Vancouver team out there. So hey, who knows? I would be all for it because it would pop us right back to an even number, right back to 14.
Oh yeah.
Which would be good. But hey, you got to talk. You got to give the MLR props too here, Matt. Talk about losing LA, losing Austin, two big cities, and now you're joining and bringing in Chicago and Miami. I really think that's a pretty fair swap here when it comes to big time sports cities that are going to draw, like you mentioned, people to come to those cities to play rugby. And we've talked with guys before that overseas, guys are really looking at these locations, and I think Miami and even Chicago are both places that people will be very interested in playing a little bit of rugby over here on stateside and all that. So yeah, definitely had to mention that. Miami Sharks official 2024, really cool stuff. But yeah, now let's move on over to do a little bit of a recap of how our draft went down last Friday. Again, had an absolute blast with our league members there, interacting with them. If you tuned in as just a watcher and follower of this league, I'm sure you saw all of the good times that we're having, all the mispronunciations that I had going through a whole bunch of players and getting corrected.
Me too.
Getting corrected by Rugby Wrap Ups Matt McCarthy live on stream. That was really good. Getting the phonetic spelt in the comment section as well. Really making us feel really good there. But nonetheless, I mean, I think the biggest way to go about this, Matt, is just to talk about things that really surprised us. And we mentioned it on the stream, how we did our own mock draft leading up to the draft. And what did we say on the show? I think we said that we maybe got 50% of that first round right. Maybe
I think that's
getting just 5 of the players, and not even the right position, just like getting those players going in the first round. Our league members must have known something, because what we thought was going to happen definitely did not happen, particularly a lot of guys picking fly halves in the first round, and even throwing in a couple of front rowers, not nearly as many back rows and centers that we thought were going to go in that first round as we expected.
Yeah, I mean, I was just floored for the entire first round. Me being the 10th pick, I was just watching these people go, and I mean, I was so confused. It actually had me nervous for who I was going to pick at 10. So, I ended up picking JP Duplessis, who I thought was not going to be available. But then I started getting second guess thoughts in my head thinking, why is this guy still available? Am I missing something? But I think it was just the way the draft went, the way you could see how some of these fantasy managers were thinking, how some of the different guys were going for some of the homegrown talent as well, the hometown teams. So, yeah, I mean, it was surprising, but I think it all evened out at the end.
Yeah, I mean, just to name a few notables here, Ed Fido getting Ed Fido, I should say, as Matt McCarthy mentioned to me. Ed Fido, he got selected first overall. We expected Bill Meeks to go there. Bill Meeks didn't end up getting selected into the very first pick of the third.
For good reason, though.
The first pick of the third round. For good reason. Obviously, we mentioned some of those work visa issues. It sounds like he's not going to be joining the team until mid-March.
Apparently, he went on a flight back to Australia.
Really? I didn't hear that. So I guess that's even more news that could either pay off if he does return and Rugby Morning was able to steal him in that third round, or maybe it's a wasted third round pick where we're really gonna have to take some time before we do see Billy Meeks. But yeah, Ed Fido getting selected in that with the first pick of the first round, and then we didn't expect. I mean, Reichert Haddon getting picked with the second pick of that first round. I mean, we know Reichert Hadding was by far the best back rower last year from a fantasy perspective.
Well, we know why.
Obviously, yes, there are a little bit of stipulations on what happened. Obviously, he received a suspension for using PEDs. Expectedly, he will be coming into this 2023 season clean. I hope. And he has served that suspension. It was a time based. I believe it was something like 6 months or something like that. And I think it was enough time between the end or when he got suspended last year towards the start of the season for him to serve that time. And then obviously there was a run of fly halves that we talked about. I mean, AJ Alatimu getting selected third. Jack Hyden
Yeah.
getting selected with
Surprise.
that sixth pick, which is a huge one. I mean, a little bit of a homer pick there by Rugby Wrap Up. Obviously, we know
Yeah.
that he has connections with Rugby New York. Sam
Uh-huh.
Malcolm getting picked with that seventh pick there. Even guys like Luke Burden getting thrown
Luke
up
Burden
there.
was a
There's a
surprise.
surprise there by Hokey Dankus Anchors there. And then who would have thought, man? You mentioned JP Duplessis, but did you really think on that last turn there at the end of the first round, the start of the second, that you'd be left with JP Duplessis and Duncan Matthews, guys that heading into this draft, when we were breaking down the top fives, you had JP Duplessis as your second best center after Billy Meeks, and then you had Duncan Matthews as your second best winger after Ed Fido, and you got them at the first round, which I think was an absolute steal, probably the steal of the entire draft, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, these two are my easiest picks of the draft, and everything after that was probably I just had conflict at every pick. So, I mean, it was nice to get the two easy ones out of the way. But yeah, definitely a surprise that those two fell to me.
Absolutely. And I guess going through some of the other picks in that first round as well, Danny Tusitala getting picked at the fourth pick was pretty surprising for me. I know that from a fantasy perspective, he was among the better scrum halves, and we talked about tier breaks kind of throughout the build up to this draft, and there really was a pretty decent drop off after Danny Tusitala. JP Smith kind of closely I guess kind of teetered there in that space, but JP Smith didn't get I'm trying to look here where he got selected, but it was later on in that second round, at the back end of the second round, so really a large space there. Not sure if that's going to pay off, to be honest. I mean, we talked about how scrum halves, they're not the best they're not the best point scorers, but we also mentioned how having a guy at that position, even though he's not putting from a position comparison to position a point level, like when you compare, like, let's say a scrum half in fantasy to a center in fantasy, obviously centers are scoring way more points than the scrum half, but at least when you go head to head, when you have a guy like Danny Tusitala and you're facing another team who has maybe one of those lower end scrum halves, that point discrepancy that you're going to have in terms of advantages going into every single week is going to be a big one. Is it worth the fourth overall pick? I'm not sure. Can it pay off? It might, but kind of your mindset on Danny Tusitala getting picked so high there, even ahead of guys like your guys' picks, JP Duplessis. I mean, he was selected ahead of Leroux Milan, Loritz Vanderskiv, Will Leonard, some of the centers that we had top there, even some of the best front rowers that we had, and even Lance Williams, who we had as the second pick, a second best back rower heading into this year. He wasn't selected in the second round too. So kind of your overall mindset in terms of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good call. It's something that we probably expected coming out of at least the first two rounds, that a few of those guys would go. I think with fly halves and scrum halves, it kind of happened exactly how we pictured it, not in terms of what players picked, but what we said when it came to, once the first scrum half comes off the board, we may start seeing some dominoes fall. Once the first fly half comes off the board, we might see some dominoes fall. And that's exactly what happened. And it left some of the guys, aka me, who didn't choose a fly half or a scrum half early on, stuck with some pretty slim options at that fly half and scrum half position.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we talked about it on the stream show as well, that I think there was a feeling that people needed to lock up their kickers really early on and get guys that are consistently getting points. And you definitely, I know and understood as we got on through the draft, you realizing that fly halves were slowly getting taken away, or at least guys that had kicking responsibilities were slowly getting taken away, and you were left with kind of reaching for the scraps and taking some shots on some guys that haven't really made an impact in the MLR as of yet. Could it pay off? It could definitely pay off, but at least from a confidence level, you are still a little bit nervous in terms of having a reliable guy at the boot there to set at a weekly basis.
I mean, I picked 3 fly halves. Of course, I'm nervous about who the heck is going to be reliable. Two out of the 5 bench positions are all fly halves, just because I don't know who the heck is starting and who the heck is going to do well. So that's me. I don't even know if Jason Potros is healthy right now. So we'll have to figure that one out. Maybe I can throw him on the IR and then, pick somebody up. Who knows? But can I bring something up, Ryan? I got to bring this up. The audacity for Vandy. I mean, he's not even here right now. He was on the live stream, but he's not even here right now to speak for his actions. The audacity of him to pick Luke Campbell, a guy that I have been raving on. As a Hurricanes fan, have wanted him the entire time.
You have.
I give him access to my data,
Yeah, to your sheets.
right, to take a look. And
Guy
he
doesn't even
decides
know how
go,
to use
hey,
Excel.
Hey, this guy looks good. I'm big Luke Campbell right before I need a 9. So, good on him, but you suck, Vandy. You stink.
And that's kind of the drafting tilt that we've talked about during the show, where when something like that happens, where you think it's kind of going your way, and then all of a sudden the rug gets kind of pulled.
That's when it all went downhill.
Yeah,
for me.
Definitely. Let's talk about Vandy. I mean, he went with LaRue Milan with that very first pick of his at that
he
center
can
position.
never make a good first pick, Ryan. I think that's just part of his
It's
DNA.
tough. I mean, last season he had a little bit of hard time with that first pick. Who do you go with? I believe it was Angus Cottrell, right?
No, he went with like 5 different guys, and then finally he figured one guy was actually in the league.
Yeah, so that was tough. But hey, who knows? I mean, LaRue Milan could still pay off. He was in my top 5 from a center position. He plays on the New England Free Jacks, which is expected to be a pretty decent team. And I mean, I think he gets bumped up with the uncertainty of guys like Bill Meeks. He definitely is a safer play.
And he locks up a back row in the second round. He locks up a kicker early. He locks up Andrew Coe. We know what we expect from him. He locks up Luke Campbell, of course he would. And yeah, I mean, I think his team looks good. I think despite maybe the shaky first pick, I think the rest of his team is building out real nicely, and I think he's happy with his draft.
And I mean, give props also to kind of the newer guys in our league. And when I'm talking about new members, Eagles Overseas, MLR All Access, Rugby Wrap Up, and James Dealey of MLR Stats, they seem to be pretty decent in terms of knowing the guys that they wanted. Obviously, Rugby Wrap Up went a little bit Rugby New York heavy in there with picks of Jack Hayden and then Dylan Fawcett.
I mean,
it's what you expected.
Rugby Morning had something to say about their drafts, though.
Interesting enough, MLR All Access going with the Seattle Seawolves handcuff, going with AJ.
Not the handcuff, the stack.
The
Ryan.
stack. Sorry, the stack. You have the New England Free Jacks
all the
handcuff. The MLR All Access team went with AJ Alatimu with their 3rd overall pick, and then coming back around to them in the 2nd round, they went with JP Smith. Obviously, the 10 and the 9 for the Seattle Seawolves respectively. I think that's a move that could really pay off. And not only is it a stack, it's one of the best stacks in the league. You're talking about the best fantasy fly half in 2022, and then also a top 3 scrum half in JP Smith. And when you combine those two guys together, I mean, it can really pay dividends. It can also hurt you if Seattle has any bad games. I mean, you're going to take hits at those points, but those are also the risk you're willing to take when it comes to the payoff that it might have if Seattle is expected to be as good as they are heading into 2023.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how this stack really is going to work. I don't know whether one is going to benefit from more points from the other. We'll see. If AJ Alatimu was more of a Bodine Waka and scored a little bit more tries, maybe we see that being a bit more effective, but we'll have to see once the season starts. I think they either, regardless of whether it's a stack or not, they ended up with 2 great, top 2 guys at their position. So yeah, regardless of the stack, I think it's 2 great picks.
Now, talking about strategy and with that stack, what do you think is kind of the best positional stack? Would you say maybe it's like a fly half, like back 3, or center back 3, maybe trying to see if you can capitalize on both the tries and the assists that happen out on the outside? What is kind of that mentality? I mean, fly half, scrum half is still pretty good.
Fly half, scrum half is good, but I mean, for me, like, you want to look at the guys that are going to be scoring points for you. So like, a center fly half, maybe that's a good stack. But at the same time, centers, you're not really looking for tries. You're looking for those meters gained. You're looking at those tackles. You're looking at those, not so much going to have the ability to have try assists for them. Maybe it's a fly half back 3 because the potential for the crossfield kick, the potential for the, balls out the back that could end up going to the back 3 and end up having big line breaks or tries. I think it's tough. I think it's so much different than, what we prototypically or stereotypically think of football, fantasy football stacks, because, there's not a guy that is throwing to just wide receivers or just tight ends. Like, there's so much variability in how a try assist can happen. The 9, most 9 try assists are probably going to be to forwards most of the time. So, it's kind of difficult to really look at a stack and see how value its effectiveness in our league.
And that's why we love fantasy MLR, because not only is it something that's brand new that we're kind of learning these strategies as we kind of
Yep.
go, but there's just a whole nother level of dynamicness when it comes to playing this style of fantasy
Uh-huh.
within the rugby space. Been a lot of fun. Another kind of storyline that we had heading into this draft as well was, when are we going to see the guy
I was
that
gonna say, and it's
is,
Vandy.
and it was Vandy with Joel Hodgson, taking him in that third round at the fly half position, locking up his team's fly half. We all know that
Yep.
he is a outside Utah Warriors fan, a secret San
Mhm.
Diego Legion fan on the
Yeah.
inside. But nonetheless, he likes to say that he's a hardcore Utah Warriors fan. He went with Lance Williams, like we mentioned, in that second round. But yeah, the first guy that is making his first MLR appearance, Joel Hodgson, was the first guy that we saw get taken that hasn't had
Yep.
any MLR experience before.
And about right where we expected to,
Right.
the third round, right? We said I think going into that, the first guy would be taken in the third round. You might have had the guy going earlier, but Vandy kind of followed status quo. We gave him the script and he followed along perfectly.
And some other guys that are brand new to the league that also got drafted kind of earlier on. Tito Diaz Bonilla of Old
Yeah.
Glory DC, their fly half, got taken in the fourth round by Stephen Lowen of the Feral Hippies. And then you got Rodney Iona getting taken by Rugby Morning in the fifth round.
Yeah, those two
fly half
getting
for
taken
Nola.
was my downfall there.
Yeah,
Right when they
really
got
lock up.
taken, that was my downfall.
Yeah, absolutely. That was tough. And you mentioned there was going to be a string of fly halves that happened. It was just, when was that going to happen? It seemed like it really happened during that third round to fifth round kind of space. Now, when it comes to, I guess, before we kind of wrap up this draft conversation, kind of look towards this tasty draft grades that John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning has kind of dropped for us. Were there any surprises kind of later on that you kind of that you were shocked that a guy was taken so late, at least from a fantasy perspective? Maybe steals that happened, or even earlier on picks that you maybe were left scratching your head a little bit. I mean, we talked about Luke Burden getting taken in the end of that first
That
round.
was a head scratcher.
That was kind of a little bit of a head scratcher. I could kind of reason with Jack Hyden getting taken with that sixth pick with Rugby Rapid. We didn't have him in the first 3 rounds, but looking back on it, maybe it was a guy that we should have considered in our 3-round mock draft. And then in terms of kind of steals down low, I mean, you talk about, a guy like Sam Windsor getting taken in the 13th round
Not worth it.
by Hoagie. I know it's kind of you have a little bit of a
not worth it.
You
You don't want to ride that train.
A
You don't
history
want
of
to ride
Sam
that
Windsor,
train.
but nonetheless. But was there anyone like that for you that stood out that got taken late that you think is going to pay off in the long run?
I mean, the big one for me, I think, was Bailey Wilson. I mean, Bailey Wilson again didn't get taken to the last round. Captain of Utah. The guy, pretty much, I had him last year, and the guy pretty much would start and finish almost every game. He was a lock there. So I was surprised he went in the last round. The other thing is, I was surprised nobody, and including myself, because I had him in my own top 5. Nobody drafted Liam Halameems.
Yeah.
So I had him in my own top 5. I realized after the fact, and I was like, oh, look out for him in our waiver talk conversation, because I'm going to bring him up.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think one last name I want to mention as kind of a steal, Avery Oideman was a name that I think is something that I wanted to bring up, because he took a break. He's not a new guy, but he took a break last season from the MLR. Was he playing overseas, Matt? Is that where
he was going to school in Wales.
Okay, so he was overseas, but the season before that, Matt and I were talking, when he was with the Toronto Arrows, he was the leading try scorer, I believe, right? Or he was up there.
Yeah, he was the leading try scorer until he left.
Until he
Or
left?
until he got hurt or something like that. But
Okay.
regardless, he's electric. I talked about him early on when he signed. I'm glad Rugby Morning saw that too. I'm honestly surprised that somebody non-Canadian,
Took him.
like not Jam Delay.
Yeah, I mean, we thought James Dealey was going to pick him. That's for sure. He had a little bit of Toronto Arrows flavor in his draft.
And I was honestly hoping to pick him off the waiver wire, but hey, Rugby Morning, kudos to you. That guy's going to be a great pickup.
And then the last interesting thing too is that the only, I believe, looking down this list, rookie that was taken in our fantasy MLR draft was taken by MLR All Access in the 11th round. And of course, it's going to be Sam Galla, a guy that had so much, I guess, hype about him heading into, obviously, the actual MLR draft. Why not? take a shot on him. I mean, who knows what he can do with the Dallas Jackals? It's a little bit tough because he is on the Dallas Jackals. We talked about when was it when the first Dallas Jackal went off the board? I think it wasn't until like maybe the 7th or 8th round. I think.
Yeah, definitely
When that
not
was
early.
happening. It definitely wasn't early, but to see a rookie kind of in the mix was a cool thing. And we'll see whether or not heading into next week after a round of game matches are played, if there's any other rookies that kind of emerge and end up being kind of those top waiver wire pickups, guys like Owen Rudden, guys like Cali Martinez. Who knows? We'll have to see
Yeah.
whether or not they are actually fantasy relevant, because we know there's a difference there when it comes to that production versus actual production on the field. But yeah, no, super exciting stuff. Let's kind of shift over to, we mentioned Rugby Morning. John Fitzpatrick is going to be giving and contributing to a lot of fantasy MLR content throughout the season on a weekly basis. Again, he already released a article a couple days ago with regards to kind of the startings of these league and kind of the whole concept behind it, which was really cool for someone to put that down in writing. We've talked about it on the show before here, but just yesterday he comes out now with draft grades and playoff probabilities. Now, how he calculated these playoff probabilities, I have no idea what type of calculus or formulas he's using, but nonetheless, I'll take it for what it is. And
I'm taking it.
I'm sure you'll take it for what it is, because at the top of that list, Rugby Morning is giving you, Matt, Ruck and Roll, the best draft grade and the highest playoff probability, a draft grade of an A.
Yeah, should have been A+.
You passed, man, a 90% playoff probability. I imagine a lot of that has to do with you getting JP Duplessis and Duncan Matthews at the end of that first round. I think you, at the end of the day, yes, you might not have locked up a secure fly half, but I think it does pay off to have the combo of both Potros and Reese McDonald. But when you saw that,
don't forget Kirk Coleman.
But when you saw that, man, you must have been super pumped too.
I felt like I already won the championship. I was ready to write the season off and just call it here. And I was going to message you and say, let's just call it. We can use these as our final standings.
Get your name on the jersey.
I'll put my name on the jersey real quick. Let's just call it here. I'll end on a high note, because look, this isn't going to stay this way. I'm pumped about this. Rugby Morning, I'm pretty sure, he even says it in the article, I'm pretty sure he's just trying to get in my head here, get my confidence up, just so he can knock me down after the first week. We'll see. It'd be ironic if in the first week I end up playing him too, and he just beats me to a pulp.
No kidding. Yeah, it's all about mind games when it comes to fantasy MLR. Coming in that next wave, the Feral Hippies, Dankus Anchors, both locking up B+ grades, 70% playoff probability. Something that is pretty good. I mean, it's cool to see, I guess, veteran league members getting at the top of these rankings. Lads on Tour came in right behind with the B grade, 60% playoff probability. Solid teams. I think that having the guys that they have, talking about, Lewis Vanderskiff with Lads on Tour, a guy that we're really high on, being able to pick Mitchell Jacobson kind of in the middle rounds, which I think a guy you mentioned, Matt.
Did you say Mitchell Jacobson?
I said Mitch Jacobson. And then Tay Walden in the 8th round, that could really pay off. And then you look at Feral Hippies, I mean, he got Hanko Gramicius, a guy that we are super, super high on, locked up Dean Muir, the best hooker in the league in terms of a fantasy perspective. And Dankus Anchors, the Luke Burden pick was kind of questionable, but he was able to kind of mitigate that with Will Leonard in the 2nd round, one of the top centers there. Getting Andrew Quatrin, who's still going to be, I would believe, a viable hooker for the New England Free Jacks if he is given those starting opportunities. So interesting there. And then we got a wave of new members with that B grade. And I don't know if this is Rugby Morning just being nice to kind of warm those guys up into the league, but MLR Stats, Eagles Overseas, MLR All Access coming in with the B grades, 50% probability, 60% for James Dealey of MLR All Access. I mean, I think nothing necessarily flashy. We talked about AJ Alatimu, the JP Smith stack, really love that. And then, with MLR Stats, I think Sam Malcolm is definitely a dependable way to go. Getting James Malcolm in the 5th round was also something that was a pretty good steal.
Oh yeah, that was a great steal.
And then I said I was a big fan of Ross Brody as well, having the guy that really is going to be that de facto 9 for the Toronto Arrows, because there really isn't anyone else. So there's going to be definitely some bonus points there. I guess a little bit modest. Rugby Morning giving himself the B- grade.
I think he's being hard on himself. The first time I read this, I was like, "Oh, this guy is just being self-critical." That's what you got to be as a fantasy manager. You got to look at yourself, understand where you got to improve, and he's going to be big on the waiver wire, making sure that he can move that up to an A grade for his team by the end of the season.
It only makes him look even better, right? He starts off with a low
course.
grade. He looks modest, and then
Of
all of a
course.
sudden he
And
starts
then he
killing it.
trashes rugby wrap up at the
Yeah,
end.
absolutely. And then hey, you got to give our boy Vandy some tough love there. B-. He says a
That
much
too.
improved side from last year, but
Well, that's
but
pretty
still,
easy.
I think for me personally, the LaRue Milan pick was a little bit dicey there at that start. But again, picking up Lance Williams, Joel Hodgson, Andrew Crow, Luke Campbell, that stretch of basically rounds 2 through 5, I should say, were just, I think, really stellar for Vandy. And then, yeah, you mentioned it, Matt. Rugby wrap up. I mean, Jack Hyden, the questionable. Again, I said that I can understand that pick. He did get Dylan Fawcett with that second round, but I think some of those middle picks. I mean, Benjamin Bonasso there in that 4th round. Tavit
Yeah,
Lopetti.
I mean, think about it this way, Ryan. You got 2 of the lowest scoring positions in your first 2 picks of the draft.
Sure.
You're gonna have a tough go there when you have, a fly half and a front row as your top 2 picks.
Sure.
You need a guy to score the points at the end of the day.
Absolutely. But yeah, that about wraps up the draft coverage that we had. It's all about now looking forward of taking these teams and hopping into week 1 with it. But again, we'll say it again, just had a lot of fun with that draft. Like we mentioned, we only plan to live stream 4 rounds of the draft at the most. I think I even said like maybe just 3 if we can make it. And we ended up going 3.5 hours because the league members were loving it, and we ended up wrapping up the first.
I mean, we kept giving them ways out, and they just kept coming back for more. So it is what it is. We stayed on for 3.5 hours. Vandy crushed some brews.
Showing the 12-pack beside him that is all done. Fitzy getting kicked to the couch because he's drinking
lots of
too
stuff
much on Friday.
happened. Yeah, you guys got it. If you have 3.5 hours, go and watch it. Go laugh a little bit. Put it on in the background. Have a little fun.
Absolutely. All right. You ready to talk a little bit of week 1, Matt? And now it's time to get into what we've all been waiting for and really starting to break down all this stuff. I will say, though, before we get to it, is there anyone, you mentioned a couple names, but is there anyone that you're looking as waiver wire pickups this Thursday? Even though no matches have been played, you're looking at your draft, your drafted team. You have the opportunity to put a little bit of money or no money at all on these first round of fab bids. Is there anyone that kind of pops out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Liam Halameems is one that I already brought up. I think he should get scooped up. He may or may not be getting scooped up by me. Who knows? I think you'll have to find out. But that's the big one for me that I kind of pointed out. There is Mike Matarazzo, who's on a new team as well. He might be also a good pickup on Chicago. We know we love our Chicago players there. And then, yeah, those are the 2 that I'm kind of looking at. Everybody else, I think you can kind of wait and see after week 1 and see how they play into the lineups.
And this might be also an opportunity to kind of take some flyers. Maybe if you don't like the guy that's at the end that you picked with your last pick, hey, maybe take a flyer on a guy like Paul Cellini. You know what I mean? Who you may think might be valuable at that second row position. One that I'll mention is kind of a little bit off the board. I know that Rugby Wrap Up went with the whole strategy of not drafting a defense or set piece. And I'm sure he's going to be making a pickup. So I'll give you the advice on which one you should pick up because a lot of the good ones are taken as of right now. Look for Old Glory DC and that set piece because their front pack, they're a bunch of big boys. They got depth there. I think that they'll be looking to really make an impact from that front end, and that's going to translate into a whole bunch of scrum try assist or maul try assists, and maybe getting some bonus points here and there. So some of the things that I was looking out for. So all right. Let's get into it. Enough stalling here. Starting to break down week 1. Let's talk about some of the guys that we're looking forward to seeing in these matches, what we expect from these matches. The entire season opens up on Friday between the matchup in Atlanta between the Toronto Arrows and Rugby Atlanta. We get to see this new branded Rugby Atlanta team, and obviously some of the boys that we're close with on the Toronto Arrows. Should be a decently exciting matchup. They open up the season with the matchup of Fire and Ice.
Yeah, the Fire and Ice Cup or whatever the heck it's called. I mean, the big storyline here for me is the fact that Rugby Atlanta is coming in hot with the new sponsor Arrow Exterminators, and the first week they're playing the Arrows. So
Pretty
you know,
ballsy there.
pretty ballsy there. But this is going to be an awesome way to start the MLR season. This matchup is always a great one. We always love to see these two teams face off.
Absolutely. Guys that you're kind of looking out for in this matchup, particularly, I mean, obviously there's the big names. I'm really excited to see Lucas Rumble do Lucas Rumble things. He's a guy that was taken later in our
especially
draft.
with our new stats, Ryan.
Exactly. He's a guy that I know is going to make a whole bunch of tackles and get breakdown steals. So he's going to really be that test guy to see what does the shift of these new stats really turn some of these players into in terms of fantasy relevant guys. So I think Lucas Rumble will be a big example of that. I mentioned Paul Cellini.
Yep.
He might be a guy that you're looking out for on the waiver wire later in the season. And it should be very, very interesting to see. But those are two guys that I'm looking for.
Yeah, for me, it's that Toronto backline. I mean, this Toronto backline is so new. They brought in so many new guys. I've got Tua Talassi on my team. I drafted him. Yeah, well, I said it for you, and it's a great name to say. I'm looking forward to him. I'm also looking forward to Fabian Goodall, another center on that squad. Potentially seeing maybe if he's a good pickup, looking at Nick Ben, Avery Oideman, who already got drafted by Rugby Morning, see how he does. Also looking at Cole Davis, who scored 2 tries in that preseason. A lot of new guys in this back line. I think it'll be interesting to see what guys are going to stand out, who's going to work in that roster, and what that starting lineup looks like.
All right, and on the Rugby Atlanta side, I can't wait to see Johan Mumsen. I mean, we talked about the special player he is at that second row position. It's going to be cool to see what he's able to do, especially with the new stats in there. Matt, this is a guy that you're sticking with. You had him last season. He was pivotal in your last place finish last year. But hey, you got him with the fourth round.
I dropped him. I think that's why I got last place.
There you go. But you picked him in the 4th round there. So it should be interesting to see if he's going to be that special player and that big advantage. We talk about guys that a position that really doesn't score a lot of points, but Johan Mumsen definitely scores a lot of points at that position. So he's a huge advantage to have there. Going to be interesting to see kind of the scrum half position, the scrum half setup in Rugby Atlanta, because for people who may be searching for a scrum half still, I mean, you got Ryan Reese there, Rowan Gauss. What will happen there? Evan Conlon's coming into the mix as well, so we'll get to see that shake up, and then we'll get to see Will Leonard do Will Leonard things. But I'm also excited to see kind of rookies like let Seth Purdy hop on and see what
we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see if he makes a lineup, because there's 3 centers already on that roster that probably are making that lineup over him. But nothing on him. That's just the way that it goes for the rookie class. If your name's not Sam Gola. But yeah, I'm excited to see Will Leonard for me. Wanting to see him perform at that top 3 center level, and really just excited to see what type of points these guys are going to produce.
Absolutely. All right. One last thing before we move on. Who's winning this matchup, Toronto Arrows or Rugby Atlanta?
Toronto Arrows.
I think the Toronto Arrows will be taking this one as well. All right, moving on to the second matchup of Friday at 8:00 Eastern. The NOLA Gold taking on the New England Free Jacks. Another massive matchup to start off the year. New England, obviously a powerhouse last season during the regular season, falling to Rugby New York in the playoffs. But NOLA Gold is a team that we have a lot of high hopes for. Made a lot of improvements heading into this year. We talked about the addition of Luke Campbell. I mean, let's start about on the NOLA Gold side, guys that you're looking forward to in this matchup. I'm going to assume that it is a guy like Luke Campbell, even though he's on Vandy's team.
I mean, I'm going to throw out the 2 guys, Luke Campbell and Rodney Iona. What does that combo look like? How comfortable are they with each other? How is Rodney Iona playing in the game style that they're playing? How's Luke Campbell doing in the game style that they're playing? Is how they're playing going to be fantasy relevant and help them increase their value? I think those are the 2 guys that I'm really looking at, and I'm excited to see.
Yeah, should be interesting, and then you'll get to also see our boy JP Duplessis do big time things.
Also,
at the center position.
In that center position though, Jordan Jackson Hope, I'm gonna say watch out for him too. He might be somebody that I'm gonna have to pick up and have both of their centers, just to see who's the guy that's gonna be really taking the ball here and taking the lead in terms of ball carries and ball meters.
And then let's shift over to the New England Free Jacks side. I think it's all about change when it comes to the New England Free Jacks. Obviously, losing what was the MVP what has become the MLR MVP last season. Bodine Waka no longer part of the New England Free Jacks. Matt is going all in on the New England Free Jacks fly half room, drafting both Reese McDonald and Jason Petros.
One of them has to start, Ryan. One of them has to start.
One of them has to start, and I'm sure you're gonna have a fantastic time throughout the year figuring out which one that is starting each week. week as you sweat now I don't know what New England Free Jacks's resume was last season in terms of getting lineups out early. I feel like they were one of the better teams, so that may
I hope so.
that may be play in your favor in terms of
Or else
deciding.
I'm going Kirk Coleman.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, that will be interesting to see how that shakes up. Are they even close to the Bodine Waka type production? Obviously,
Doubt
there's
it.
only one Bodine Waka, but even to get a piece of that, especially at the draft capital that you paid for them, that would be really really interesting. I'm also interested to see what Ben Lesage does in terms.
You can
of,
say Lesage.
well, rugby wrap up. Matt McCarthy corrected me, so I'm going to do my best
Whatever.
in terms of getting the pronunciations right. Ben Lesage is going to be in that room, in that mix. It's going to be interesting because that's a deep center room too. Wayne Vanderbank, LaRue Milan, who was drafted in that first round by.
I mean, we'll even see if LaRue Milan even plays this weekend, right? I know that there's speculation that he may be hurt, so we'll see what that center lineup looks like. But yeah, you bring up a really good point there. That center room is going to be interesting in how they work together.
And then I'll just leave it at Andrew Quattrin. Excited. He was obviously a dominant player when he was with the Arrows, and to now see him with the New England Free Jacks should be interesting to see how he kind of enters the fold. They do have Mil Santorivi, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there, and how that kind of all plays. And
I'll just add also Mitch Jacobson, Ryan. We'll get to see a chance. We'll get a chance to see how he does and how involved he's going to be. In every game.
Absolutely. All right. Between the new Nola Gold and the New England Free Jacks, who you taking, Matt?
Going Nola Gold.
And I think I'm also going to take Nola Gold here as well.
Ryan, you're just copying.
I know. We got to do a little bit different because we're going to keep this tally throughout the season and see who does
I've been
better
cheering for Nola Gold for years.
I know. But you've had me now jump on this Nola Gold bandwagon and this hype train because I think I agree with you. I'm pretty excited for this team. All right. Moving on to now the first matches of Saturday. It starts off at 2:00 Eastern time. The All Glory DC taking on the brand new Chicago Hounds. I guess let's start with All Glory DC, Matt. This is a team that obviously had a rough year last season. Three wins on the season, 13 losses, but they put up the most points in the entire league despite having that, but they also led up the second most points in the league. So you're not going to be winning many matchups when it comes to that as well. But nonetheless, I'm super excited to see what Tito Diaz-Bonilla does at that fly half position. Kurt Baker joins the mix as a player coach there as well. And then we talk about this powerful front row that they have going between Jack Iscaro, the incoming Ramiro Herrera. You know, you got the rookies Koi Nelligan and Cali Martinez. We'll see how they kind of enter that mix. And you obviously got Facundo Gaddis as well. I think, again, I mentioned it, that they might be a defense or a set piece that you will look to pick up. But I'm excited to see what they have there. And also, now this year, team captain, Jameson Faanana Schultz, can he stay disciplined? Can he go there and be an impactful player on the field? Because if he does stay on the field and is available, I think his fantasy outlook is going to change quite a bit throughout the course of the season as compared to 2022.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how long Banana goes without punching a guy in the face. So we'll have to start the timer on that and see how many weeks it takes. I think you pointed out a good guy, Ryan. I'll just back on your pick for Kurt Baker to be watching out for this weekend. I think he may have a big weekend, a big first week in the MLR.
And let's now shift over to the Chicago Hounds, a team that we kind of don't know much about. We're going to see them for the first time this weekend. We kind of know on paper for a long time what was happening. But guys that I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see, again, kind of the same way Old Glory, to see how this pack operates. Can Hugh Roach be the guy that really benefits from that? We talked about how Sam Harris is moved from Austin Gilgronis to coach the Chicago Hounds. Hugh Roach was a part of Austin, and we know how powerful that front pack was in terms of mauling and getting tries in. So can Hugh Roach kind of capitalize on that coming here? And then I'm excited to see Luke Carty, man. This is a guy that was dealing with a lot of injury stuff with the Giltinis before, not really that available last season, but he has all the tools in his toolbox in terms of weapons around him to really be a strong distributor. And if that's the case, he's going to be very, very fantasy relevant. And if not, winning people weeks when it comes to a week-to-week basis for the Chicago Hounds.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it'll just be interesting to see what lineup they put out there. I don't know what the back line looks like. They got 110 on their roster so far that we can confirm. They've got 2 centers, not 3. So I think it'll be interesting to see even what their lineup looks like. And maybe, some sneaky picks will be made from guys who we didn't even know were in the league.
And I expect it's going to be Mark O'Keefe and Bryce Campbell there starting at the center position. So it'll be interesting to see the production that they have, because they're stepping in for a guy that obviously had a lot of high hopes with Bill Meeks possibly not being available for the start of the season. And then I'll just throw one last name in there, JP Eloff. He was the guy that was brought in by the Chicago Hounds, played for Nola Gold last season. Can he be the benefactor out there, being the try scorer for them? Because if he is, he'll be a fantasy steal as well. So Old Glory DC at home against the Chicago Hounds. Matt, who you got?
I got to go with Old Glory DC. I think they're going to start off strong. And I don't know. I don't know enough about these Chicago Hounds in order to go with them. I think a lot of the guys that we were hoping that they would be able to rely on potentially aren't even playing until later on.
And I already made this pick on if you guys didn't know, I have been have a great opportunity with now being the host of the official Old to Glory DC podcast, The Road to Glory. We had a little prediction segment on that show, and I sided with Old to Glory DC. Made a real my co-host on that show, Gavin Hickey and Roland Pratt, both made really good points about Old Glory DC really has an advantage here in terms of, by not seeing what the Chicago Hounds have, they can really stick to their game plan with new head coach Josh Sims, go into the matchup really focusing on what they need to do, and that might pay dividends, as there's no kind of second thoughts in terms of a game plan. Go in, test it out, and it may pay dividends heading into there. So I'll go Old Glory DC as well. Three of three, man. We're the same here. We got to switch it up.
Well, you're just copying me at this point. Also, that's a weird take in my opinion, but hey, let's move on.
We'll move on here. All right, second matchup of the day, 7:00 p.m. Eastern time, airing on Fox Sports 2. So one of the big matchups of the weekend, San Diego Legion taking on the Utah Warriors in that beautiful brand new home of the San Diego Legion, Snapdragon Stadium. Let's talk about some guys that you're looking forward to. I'm calling this the Mikey Teo redemption match because he used to be on the Utah Warriors and now he's on the San Diego Legion. He's a guy that you might want to look out for in terms of what he can do now back on the San Diego Legion. But for you, who are you really looking out for in this Legion squad?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Oxberger on my squad, so I'm obviously seeing where he fits into this lineup. You know, is he going to be the starting nine? That nine room is pretty deep, but it'll be exciting to see him back on the field. He was injured for a lot of last season. And then the other, the other one is also, I'm always excited to see what Matthias Fryer and, Ryan Matias and how that back three looks. They always have been electric. I'll let you kind of speak for Mikey Teo. I'm excited to see him too, but that back three room has gotten even more electric this year, and I'm excited to see how they operate.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. Let's shift over to now the Utah Warriors here. Vandy's favorite team, obviously.
Yeah.
So I gotta make sure that we're giving all the juicy tidbits here. I mean, the biggest storyline here is with Joel Hodgson, right? You're looking at a brand new guy that's stepping in that fly half position. He's in the mix with Calvin Whiting there, but it sounds like that Whiting will be moving to the like a center position. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting that right?
I believe so. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of operates, but I'm assuming for you too, Joel Hodgson is kind of the guy that you're really pointing out here for the Utah Warriors.
Yeah, and I mean, also the first hooker in front row that I picked was Henry Bell. He's a new guy. He's the rookie, or a new guy in the MLR coming over from the Bunnings Cup. We've talked about in the past. I had him in my top 5. I'm excited to see what he looks like if he's starting, and how he looks for the Utah Warriors.
And I'm interested to see kind of where the kicking duties lay with this team as well. Obviously, we expect Joel Hodgson to be kicking, but Caleb McInerney was also a guy that was very successful for them last season as well. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. But between the Legion, between the Utah Warriors, who are you going with here on Saturday at Snapdragon Stadium?
I mean, I'm going with the Warriors.
Oh my gosh, I'm going with the Warriors. Dude, we're gonna go.
You're
we're
a
gonna.
Dude.
No, you're the. I already made this pick on the Road to Glory podcast last night.
You didn't.
I did.
No, you
It's
didn't.
on record, man. But I guess you're both going. And mind you, I'm reminding all the listeners and the viewers, Matt and I did not go over these picks before.
This is ridiculous.
We started this podcast. But
this is ridiculous.
I'm going to Utah Warriors as well.
I bet you Vandy would have gone San Diego Legion.
That would have been very telling if he did. That's for sure. All right, let's shift up to the late evening matchup on Saturday. Man, this is, I think, the one that probably most people are looking forward to.
This is the one that should have been on Fox Sports too.
No, because this one's on Fox Sports 1.
Whoa!
Seattle Seawolves taking on the New York Ironworkers in a rematch of last year's MLR final,
Wow.
9:30 p.m. Eastern time. I mean, there can't be enough said about this matchup. It's going to be
No.
high stakes. It's going to be a lot of redemption, a lot of
Yep.
vengeance involved here.
Yep.
I guess we'll start with the runner-ups here, the Seattle Seawolves. Lots of storylines going into this one. What are you looking at most in terms of players and fantasy production?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's going to be the Riker Hatting story. You know, I want to see whether is he starting, is he going to be playing? How does Ronan Foley's position kind of play into the way that Riker Hatting is going to be on the field at 8? Is Ronan Foley going to move to a different position? We don't know. We're going to find out. And I think that'll definitely be something to watch because that can have a huge fantasy impact depending on how that combo works.
And talk about other handcuffs as well, ones that you have. You got both Connor Mooneyham and Duncan Matthews. That's something else that I'm very interested to see how that operates. Obviously, we know what Duncan Matthews is able to do, but Connor Mooneyham, a former first-round pick of the MLR,
and had a great preseason.
Had a great preseason. Came from the Austin Gilgronis, signs with the Seattle Seawolves. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of plays into the fold. So should be interesting stuff. All right, shifting over now to the 2022 MLR champions, Rugby New York Ironworkers.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of storylines here with this team too, because even for a team that won the championship last season, they still
and didn't change much, Ryan.
Didn't change much. There's a couple departures that were key to kind of that run last year, but then also a couple acquisitions that are coming in. Obviously, losing Nehe Miller-Scudder and Waisake Nahalo for this season, but they do bring in Tay Walden, and I'll start with it there. I'm super excited to see how he kind of gets interjected into the mix. I could imagine probably in this first week you may not want to be starting him in your fantasy lineups just because if he will obviously wait for the lineups to come out. I can't imagine that he would maybe be starting this week over Jason Emery and Fa'asi Fuatai, to be honest. Those are guys obviously that were starting last season. I think by the end of the year, Tay Walden will be in the starting mix, but I think to open up the year, especially with how late he joined the Ironworkers, maybe a little bit of time before we see what Tay Walden can actually do in the MLR.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have to see what this backline looks like. I think the addition of Tay Walden makes a lot of interesting decisions in terms of do they move Fuatai to the wing now? You know, a back three of Fuatai, Windsor, and Ko, Fuatai, and Fido or Fidao. You know, that's a pretty deadly back three right there. So I think it'll be interesting to see that. For me, the one thing that I want to see is what can Fidao do this season? Is he going to be worth it for that number 1 pick? You know, is he going to be the guy that we're expecting and the guy that Rugby Morning is expected to really blow up again this year, just like he did last year?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to it. I have a feeling we're picking the same team in this one too. But the Seattle Seawolves at home against the Rugby New York Ironworkers. I would like to say on the record, I have also made this pick already on the record, so I know who I'm going with.
Okay, you go first this time, Ryan.
But I'm going to be taking the Rugby New York Ironworkers in this one to repeat against the Seattle Seawolves.
All right, nice. I'm going Seattle Seawolves.
All right.
Why are you laughing?
Because I knew you were going to pick Seattle You weren't picking Seattle Seawolves before.
Yeah, I was.
Were you? Okay.
I was. Look at that Seattle Seawolves squad, Ryan.
It's intense. I can't go.
That Seattle Seawolves squad is better than last year.
It is.
Rugby New York has hardly changed.
Fair enough.
Actually, they might have gotten worse with the loss of, Andy Ellis and some of those other guys that were playing in the finals.
And Andy Ellis is I guess that's a storyline to mention too, is like this 9 room, right? You got Connor McManus, Connor Buckley, they brought in Christian Rodriguez,
Eamon Matthews.
Eamon Matthews, obviously last season we saw most of Connor McManus filling in that role when Andy Ellis wasn't playing. But
look at the additions of the Seattle Seals, right? You look at Ben Mitchell, you're looking at Connor Mooneyham, you're looking at I'm trying to look at who else is new to that team, but those are the big names right there, right? Like Peter Malcolm as well, Jake Turnbull, like all these guys are just more additions to the squad that have made them an even better squad than last year. And they still got Riker Hatting. They add Ronan Foley.
True, fair enough.
It's
Can
you
I
know,
can I
don't.
can I change my pick?
No,
And
no,
I
you already
and,
put it on the record.
and I will say as well, Seattle is playing at home for this
That
opening
too.
matchup too, and the Starfire Sports Complex is definitely a bump in place
Always
to play
is.
at home, and it'll be definitely a tough environment for the Rugby New York Ironworkers to play and come out with a victory there. All right, kind of a weird matchup to finish off the first week on Sunday, the lone matchup on Sunday, 8:05 p.m. Eastern time kickoff in Arlington. The Dallas Jackals taking on the Houston SaberCats. I've lost track of what these cups are called. Do you know what the Dallas Jackals and the Houston SaberCats one is called?
Yeah, the Meow Cup.
I'm gonna search this one up. But while I'm saying that,
It's the Meow Cup, Ryan. Just believe me.
now for the
It's the kitty cats.
to the kitty cat cup, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the kitty cat cup.
Yeah, let's rename it right now. But let's talk about I mean, let's start with the Dallas Jackals first and get it out of the way. I mean, from a fantasy perspective, what do we even
They
know?
stink.
What do we even know from this team? Obviously, it'll be interesting to see what Sam Gala is able to
Can
do.
we take in Cole told us that these guys might win a chip this year or something like that? He said, "Watch out for those Dallas Jackals." Whatever, Cole.
Just kind of boosting up the entire league, man. Come on. But yeah, I mean, it's Sam Gala for me looking at this, really, and then just kind of looking at the team overall and just trying to determine whether or not there's anyone else that's fantasy relevant on this squad. That you could pick up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like you're looking at some of these Argentinians, and how is that going to play into this? You know, they have so many Argentinian kind of invasion on this team. Does that help their team? You know, you look at a guy like Marcos Moroni, who was on the Houston SaberCats last year. He's a class player. Is this his year that he's going to kind of explode? I like him. I've always liked him since he joined the MLR. I'll be looking out for him to see maybe whether he's a sneaky little pickup going into next week.
Absolutely. All right, let's shift over to the Houston SaberCats. Obviously, this is a team that I'm very, very high on with some of these key guys. I'm looking at Hanko Germicius, Lourdes Vanderskiff, and I'll even throw Nathan Den Hout in there as well. Obviously, both Hanko and Nathan Den Hout coming from the LA Giltinis from last season, and then Lourdes Vanderskiff having that 7-game, 7-try stretch there as well should be pretty interesting to see. Kind of how that all plays out. But yeah, those are kind of the three guys that I'm really excited to kind of see, and you can even throw Jerry Labuschagne in there as well. To see how he does in the fantasy mix. But what about for you?
Yeah, I'm looking at two guys. Drew Wild, the newcomer who is in my back three, top five. I'm excited to see him. I was excited to see Vandy draft him too. So, you know, I'm excited to see what he can do for this field, for this team. Also, looking out for where Christian Dyer is in that starting lineup. If he's on the wing, I think that's great for fantasy. I think he's always been way more electric on the wing than he has been at center. So I think seeing that and seeing if that's going to be something that we'll see moving forward, that's going to be big for his draft capital and his trade capital moving forward.
That is definitely true. And I just searched it up, and I have an answer for you on what this cup is called. Now, I don't know if it still counts, but there was something called the Lone Star Champs, and that was something though that was played between the Gilgronis, the SaberCats, and the Jackals. I'm not sure if that still counts, so I think we're going.
Well,
with
now
it's the
Kitty Cat Cup.
I think we're going with the Kitty Cat.
It's the Kitty Cat Cup.
That's what it's called. So we'll see whether or not who comes out on top. But
sponsored by Purina.
Too good. All right. Well, who's taking the Kitty Cat Cup then? The Dallas Jackals or the Houston SaberCats to round out week one?
You go first.
Well, dude, that's not going to change your answer. I know it's not going to
change. You go first.
I'm going to pick the Houston SaberCats. I think it's
of course we're going with the SaberCats. We all know what the Jackals are.
All right. Well, those are our picks for this first week. We'll go back in next week and tally those up to see who lands up on top. Obviously, it just comes down to the matchup they'll be airing on Fox Sports 1
and
at
Vandy automatically picks all the ones that we didn't pick. So.
Exactly. He just continues to lose every single week. Even though he'll probably be going through a tough time anyways. He just finished the stressfulness of watching his boys in the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs win that, and now he gets to hop into the world of fantasy MLR and stress about that. Never ends for that guy.
Hero to zero.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, man, couldn't be more excited. Week one is finally here for the MLR, which means week one for fantasy MLR is here as well. It's all about rolling this. I mean, Matt, it feels like we've been building up to this for so long, and we talked about how busy of an off season it was and how unprecedented it felt like. And I can only imagine it's just going to lead into a season that is going to be so exciting, so awesome, especially with unprecedented stuff that we've done here from a fantasy level with the website, with the expanded stats, now with 10 teams, with the community members that we have. It's going to be super awesome. And again, we can't appreciate the support enough from the now what I'll call the fantasy MLR community, because it is growing fast, and you guys have been awesome following along with us here. And we're hoping that you'll continue to follow us along in this upcoming season, because I don't think you guys will be disappointed.
Yeah, and you know what? The big thing, and I think all of our fantasy managers are going to have this going into week 1, is they're going to be watching the games completely different. I know Vandy's going to be watching the games completely different. I know I'm going to be watching the games completely different. I'm going to be cheering for tackles. I'm going to be cheering for, turnovers, meters gained. Every time JP Duplessis touches the ball, I'm going to be cheering. I don't have to wait for a try every time. It's going to be awesome. I love it. Can't wait. It's going to be a whole new experience. It's almost like a new league again. So I'm excited for it.
And even for guys that like the newcomers in our league, Eagles Overseas, Rugby Wrap Up, MLR Stats, and the MLR All Access team. We've mentioned this on the draft episode too, is that they've obviously watched rugby for a long time through the lens of just being a rugby fan. And now for the first time ever, they get to watch it through a fantasy rugby lens. And you're going to be amazed on how much that skews thing. You may have been cheering for the right play before when you're watching it, making that extra pass. But this season, if your player is holding on to that ball 5 meters away from the try line, you will be yelling at him.
The minute your player touches the ball, we cheer for selfish rugby.
Exactly. So yeah, super looking forward to this week 1. No shortage of exciting matchups. Gonna be a lot of fun, and this is where it begins, man. The classic week to week show now, talking about the games, talking about the previews, talking about pickups, and really going over the results from a fantasy perspective. It all starts now, heading into this week 1.
And hey, Ryan, I guess the people can look forward to the release of the first week matchups. So, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to who I'm playing. I hope it's somebody, not that great. One of those guys that got a B- or maybe even Rugby Wrap Up.
Hey, at least you're transparent with that. But yeah, look out for that, league members. We'll be releasing that along with our website. The schedule will be up there in due time. Once that is up, Alistair and myself are working through that, and we'll make sure that gets all set up ahead of Friday's matchups. But yeah, like I said, going to be a super exciting season. Can't wait for it to begin. And we'll see you all next week once the first round of our first expanded fantasy MLR season happens, and we'll get to talk with you guys all over again, and get to spend the next 18 weeks with you guys talking a little fantasy MLR, which we're super excited for.
Heck yeah.
Got anything else to say, Matt?
Got nothing for the people except the guy that I'm facing from week 1. You stink. I'm going to take you down.
All right. Well, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you throw us a like, subscribe down below as well. Join at Fantasy Ruckers on Instagram, on Twitter. Make sure you join the Discord community as well to be first in the know about the world of fantasy MLR and what we're really doing here at the Fantasy Ruckers. Going to be super exciting stuff, and you'll want to be joining this ride for the next 18-week period, because it's only going to go up from here. For Matt Yee, I'm Ryan Yee. We'll see you next week here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Randy, you stink.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.